Welcome everyone to our Business and Finance Career Panel, brought to you by Career Connect Southwest at ESD 112. This is the second in a series of 7 virtual career panels available here on this YouTube page. We hope these panels will familiarize you with some jobs and maybe even help you choose your own career path. Thank you to the middle school and high school students who submitted questions for today's panel. I'd like to introduce you to our host, Scott Culbertson.
Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to have this panel. We were just discussing before we started this session, and we have almost 150 years of experience between the folks who are going to be answering your questions here today. And it stretches everything from entrepreneurship to executive management to CPA experience. So this is a great group to have. We're really honored to have you here. And I'd really like to start it out with a brief introduction from the panel. And if you would just introduce yourself with your name, your current job position, and the company that you're working with. And then if you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about yourself to our student audience, that would be appreciated as well. And so to make this easy, let's start with you, Janet, and then we'll go to Tracy, Frank, Kelly, and Casey.
Great. Thank you for having me on here. My name is Janet Kanaskie, and I'm currently the Vice President of Operations for the Greater Vancouver Chamber of Commerce. That's an organization that supports businesses in our local community in Southwest Washington. We do a couple of things. Actually, we do quite a few things, but a lot of it revolves around supporting of our businesses, wherever our businesses are at, whether it's on advocacy. So when you look at what's happening at your state capitol, and working with our legislative officials, it could be putting on programs to help those small businesses. Timely right now, working on programs to help those restaurants and retailers that are being really hurt by COVID. So our organization is flexible, but our whole goal is to support the business community. I've been here at the Chamber of Commerce for a little over a year, and I spent the last 15 and a half years as the Deputy Director and International Marketing Director for an international trade association. So one of the things that I love to do when I wasn't traveling around the world working on business matters was letting our youth know the opportunities that exist, not just here in our community, but what you can do overseas and what you do now really does matter. One of the things that I also love to do is work with our youth and letting them know that the opportunities are there. And a lot of our youth don't understand that they can right now probably go toe to toe with some 30 and 40-year-olds for some jobs that are out there. And I think that is what I want people to know, is that there is hope out there. There's also a lot of possibility if you hone your skills, look at what you want to do in the future and use that academic education in order to get there. It's possible, and I've seen some really great things happening with those high schoolers that are graduating and moving on to the next level, even at the White House level or in a really big role internationally, even as a young person in business. So I'm excited to be here and maybe share some of that throughout the day.
Great. Thank you, Janet. Tracy?
Hi, I'm Tracy Sherman, and I'm a certified public accountant, which means that I do taxes currently from my home. I've worked for corporations. I've been the CFO of a nonprofit agency, and I kind of fell into my job. I don't know how you fall into becoming a CPA, but I had no idea what I wanted to do when I was in high school, and I got a job in a warehouse, and I worked my way up. So I started at the bottom and worked my way up. And like Janet says, with all those businesses she's working with, every one of those businesses needs an accountant, and they all pay taxes. So it's a job that gives great job security, and you can do it from your home or you can travel all over the world. So it's very cool in that regard.
Great. Thank you. How about Frank?
Hello, my name is Frank Aff, and I am the founder and principal owner of AOA. And so we are a company that helps businesses with solutions to basically improve how they operate and be more profitable and active in the community, et cetera. And I actually started in, most of my career has been in operations. I started as a cable splicer or a technician in the Washington International Guard, really laid the foundation for my career, which went to work for GTE, which became Verizon, and paid for a lot of my education, and really through my master's in business, and then really got a chance to work up and be promoted up into senior leadership. And so a chance to really see a lot of different aspects of the job. And I'd love to encourage young people to really look at what are the things that they naturally are passionate about. And so hoping to help with that today. On the personal side, I'm a dad. I've got a 19-year-old daughter who's a freshman in college, and a almost 16-year-old son who's a sophomore in high school, and married, and have a couple of pups in the house. So
awesome. Thank you, Frank. Kelly, how about over to you?
I'm Kelly Bruce, and I am currently, and actually the last 5 years, an owner of an Allstate insurance agency. And with Allstate, we're all independent business owners. So it's been a real challenging struggle to really learn a new industry, but so fulfilling because my passion is really helping people. It's not about selling insurance. It's showing people how to protect not only their cars and their homes, but their families. So it's really an all-encompassing kind of care, I guess you could say. Prior to owning my Allstate insurance agency, which, by the way, I just recently moved to downtown Washougal, which is really an exciting venture for me because I am a 27-year resident of Washougal. Prior to this, I owned a restaurant in downtown Camas, had that for 15 years, and still do a little bit of catering. Wine is my passion, love to talk about it, sell it, have a little few, because of COVID, looking at some other entrepreneurial virtual ideas, because obviously through this pandemic, we're all learning new creative ways to deal with running a business, running our lives, and staying mentally and physically healthy. So that's been a huge door open for me in terms of not knowing that today is really our new reality, and it's not going to ever go back to what it was before. So just really learning and being creative to figure out how to move forward and be successful in our environment today. So prior to that, I worked at Boeing as a business manager. I was a marketing director at Costco. And while I was at Boeing, they paid for my master's degree, and I feel just so fortunate for that. So, and then, right out of college, I was a manager in a department store. So I've had a lot of different experiences, but where I've landed today is probably where I am the most happiest. And it's really about taking care of people. And that was a crazy transition from a restaurant owner into insurance. But what I learned about that is that I'm taking care of people, and it's what I love to do.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kelly. And we're going to get to a question that asks about the path that you all have taken. So that's a great lead in. Casey, how about you?
Sorry, I was on mute. Because I'm working from home during COVID and I'm homeschooling. So I'm going to add homeschool teacher to my resume for today. I am the co-founder of Foodie in Training, a company that I started with Kelly, and also a marketing consultant. I'm a graduate of Washougal High School. I followed a very non-traditional path from high school to self-employment. I went into marketing straight out of high school for a local company. They helped pay for my schooling, went to school full-time at night, and got 3 degrees, which I use every single day to help industrial manufacturing firms market themselves, position themselves. And one thing I have to say about this panel that I love, thank you for having me, but I love that you put marketing and business together. because there's, for so many years on my path, I noticed that marketing was put into a separate category from business development. And really, one of the things I've learned over the years is that everyone who answers the phone is in marketing. And so I think understanding that, if we're going to be talking about marketing, that's the one thing that I wanted to communicate to every student who's watching this, is that every person who touches the product, every person who answers the phone, we're all in marketing today. And it's a very exciting time to be here.
Great. Yeah, that's very true. All right, so thank you all very much. As you mentioned, this is a panel with broad knowledge. The first question, and just a note for our students, in case you don't hear your question verbatim, it means that we had several along the same theme, and I'm paraphrasing. So the first one will go to Kelly and to Casey. The question is, what caused you originally to go into a small business startup operation, and was it a specific event, or was it a sort of a lifelong yearning that you've had since you started thinking about your career path?
Kelly, do you want to take it, or should I?
Yeah.
That's part of being partners right there.
Yeah.
Is pushing one person in front. I'm going to gush about Kelly for a second, so I'll take it. Kelly is amazing at creating experiences for people. And that's really the basis for our company, Foodie and Training, is the experience of food, the experience around the table. And at the same time, that's been the most difficult thing to kind of put our finger on and communicate to people. Kelly and I are both, Mark and Stephanie, the third founder of our startup. All three of us have marketing degrees, and all three of us struggle daily to put our finger on what it is about our particular company that will make people want to come buy our product. And so the conversation I remember very clearly. I was helping Kelly with her marketing for her restaurant in downtown Kamas. She had a very successful restaurant. People loved her food. When she decided to do something different, everybody wanted her recipes. And she could do a cookbook. We had talked about that for years, but we wanted to zag. We wanted to do something different. And so Stephanie's grandmother had passed away, and Stephanie received her recipe box. And we were meeting every week to talk about business ideas and just be entrepreneurial. And that's when it hit us that a recipe box could be something low tech and high touch that we could marry with high tech. So we do a lot online with the physical recipe box. But I think that was the conversation that started it all. Would you say so, Kelly?
To a certain extent. Casey had a really, really inventive idea because she just had a baby and was really concerned that she didn't know how to cook and provide, healthy meals for her child as she was growing up. And she had created a mat so that they could still go to restaurants, and it would go under the high chair. So I don't want to get into that whole part of it, but it was very intuitive, and we went through a total metamorphosis, and we are what we are today. And tonight we're going to have a live virtual cook-off, basically, and the three of us are going to prepare the same meal and have some kibitzing and learning experience.
Awesome. And I'll ask a follow-up question of the two of you because it was common in the questions submitted to us. There's curiosity around the risk that people take when they open a business. Did you, the two of you, seek outside financing for this venture, and how did you weigh the risk and potential return of taking that on?
So I'll start, Casey, and then you pick up, because your experience is quite a bit different than mine. I was a marketing director at Costco, and my husband and I had adopted our son from Korea. And he had just started a new career. And because I was in the Portland metro area, and I was just feeling very stagnated with my growth and opportunity with that company. And I knew that I probably needed to move to Seattle, but it just, for my family, wasn't the best choice. So I started to feel like my fire was starting to dwindle away, and the embers were, it was time for me to make a change. And I had an opportunity to open a business with a friend, and we started Salute Wine Company. It was a wine shop, and we integrated catering, and it metamorphosed into us splitting up our business and myself having my own business. And, I reflect on that risk question all the time. And there's just something about me that I'm not afraid to leap and just try it, because there's always the opportunity to go back and do something else.
Mm-hmm.
A decision today isn't your forever decision. There's so many opportunities out there, and everything that we do, we learn from. And that's the biggest thing I can say from every experience that I've ever done. There's not a guidebook on how to do everything, and you can't Google everything. You have to actually experience it and take that away. And I love to share my experiences with people, because you don't need to reinvent the wheel every time. Just talk to people and learn from their mistakes and successes.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. I'm going to direct this one over to you, Janet. The question is, what's the most challenging aspect of your day? And can you describe what makes an excellent day and what makes a poor day for you personally?
I think the most challenging part of my day is turning my day off. That to be honest, when you work in an industry that supports businesses, especially right now, so let's take this week or this month as a good example. What I thought I was going to be working on this month looks nothing like what I'm working on this month, right? So I think the flexibility, we spend a lot of our time talking with our companies, talking with our legislators, making sure people are comfortable. When we look at Casey and Kelly, it's making sure that companies that are entrepreneurs have what they need in order to succeed through this time, or information in general. So my general job in operations, which is what I love most, is trying to make sure that there's efficiencies across the board. And I love data. I love putting that into action, and I like change. So for me, and I know Scott, you know this, change management is my passion. Mm-hmm. And helping people along with change can sometimes be quite an endeavor. But that's a typical day for me. Starts at 7 and ends probably at 7 or 8 o'clock at night right now. But I also learned along the way that I love what I do. And like all the other panelists, I found where I'm supposed to be. When you enjoy what you do, it really is not like going to work. If I have free time, literally I call up friends and try and help them with their companies, right? Because that's what I do with my free time, because seeing other people succeed is important. And I knew early on that I did not want to be an entrepreneur. So for those entrepreneurs who take that leap, we need that in our community, and we find that so vital. But equally as vital, you have to recognize what you're cut out for, the risk that you want to take. And I knew early on that I wanted to support other organizations. So that's what it looks like on a day-to-day. It's hard to answer, because it keeps you on your toes, for sure.
Always changing. Yeah.
Always changing.
Thank you, Janet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to direct this next question to Frank, but Tracy, I'd also like to get your thoughts on this as well. So the question is, when you pursue a business or a business career, we tend to think about our career path is, I want to do this, I train for it, and then I go do it. And hearing this panel speak, it doesn't really work that way, especially in business. And there's some amount of chance, if you will, serendipity, good fortune that comes along and steers you in a certain direction. And the question as it was stated to me, was in other career paths, you know, let's say you want to be a dental hygienist. Well, you pretty much know, right, what you're going to be doing. But if you go into business, that's not necessarily the case. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that observation, Frank, and then Tracy, yours as well.
You know, and certainly jump in if I start to go down the wrong path here. I would say, you know, what was interesting with me with business, and I would say, well, right out of the gate, I would say that the unique thing about business is it's so versatile. It touches so many aspects of our lives. And so you could really have interest in so many things and apply it to business. I think the given would be certainly if you're entrepreneurial, right? That's something to consider. But in my case, it's interesting. I really started with me looking at what were the things that I was good at when I was young. And for me, I loved figuring out how things worked. I was always taking apart my toys and things, even as a kid, trying to figure out how they work, how I can make them better, fix them, whatever. And so I really, you know, as I was in high school, I thought, you know, I'm really technically minded. I enjoy math and science and fixing things and figuring out how they work. So I thought engineering, I want to be an engineer. And that encouraged me to go into my my Air Force unit, and which was an engineering installation squadron, and had a chance to get training right out of high school and learn about the technical parts of fiber optic cable splicing and all troubleshooting and all those things that were right up my alley on the technical side. And but what was interesting as far as the transition to business is that as I continued to go to school, and I also had kind of a non-traditional, you know, route as far as I was married when I did most of my education, and you know, young family and whatnot. But as I continued to grow, I started to really realize that, you know what, I enjoy leadership. And then it transitioned into the business piece of it, was that all of that desire to understand how things work and to fix things, improve things, increase efficiency, it all transfers into business. That I was like, oh, kind of the ultimate of this troubleshooting, problem solving, you know, piece of my mind. I mean, what better than in business when you're working with people and processes and coming into an organization and understanding, trying to understand, okay, how do they work? What are the things that are causing problems, et cetera? So I think it can really look different for a lot of different people, but particularly where I'd encourage anybody to really look at, hey, what are the things that I'm naturally interested in? If you get, you know, a half an hour that you can do anything, what is that? And what draws you to that thing? Really look at that, or the things that you tend to be strong at, or the things that you struggle with. I mean, by all means, you wouldn't want to take a job just because, oh, this makes money, but I'm going to be fighting that the rest of my life because I'm really not interested or I'm not naturally talented in it. But I would say back on point with that question is just that, you know, it wasn't a straight path for me to get there, but really realizing how exciting it could be to take the things that I was naturally interested at and apply it into the world of business.
Mm-hmm. Great answer. Tracy, what are your thoughts?
I come from a similar background as Frank. I got married a year after high school and started a family pretty quickly. And so when I started work, I was at the bottom of the food chain. And one of the things you learn quickly is to surround yourself with people doing the things that you want to do. And how did they get to where they were? And so that's what I did. And I always worked hard. I always looked for things to do, and I was promoted. And then we had a huge layoff, which usually would be a very bad thing. But because I was working hard, our CFO saw something in me and said, why don't you be our financial manager? Because by that time I was doing clerking and accounts receivable and payroll. And so I was actually promoted to financial manager because they needed to cut costs. And why not hire the kid without the degree? Because I can get her for cheap. So then they paid for my degree, which changed my life because I learned everything I needed to learn on the job, but I needed the credibility of a degree to hang out with the people in the circles and have them just have faith in what I was saying. And so that degree gives you a lot of credibility in that regard. You're going to learn what you're going to learn on the job. School didn't really help me as far as that goes, but it did give me the credibility that I needed and helped me be more of a critical thinker. I also I've always loved writing. And so as an accountant, you're like, well, why do you write? Well, if you look at financial statements, there's a lot of writing that can be done. And like Kelly and Casey, I love helping people. And so I love helping businesses figure out what they need to do to get started. A lot of people don't come to an accountant until it's too late. And so if you can find somebody that can network you with those people and help them create a business plan and a break-even point and let them know what they need to do in order to be successful in their business before they start it, it can make a huge difference, and that feels really well. So I always look for different opportunities. Writing took me to, I was able to write for the Huffington Post. I wrote for different newspapers. I wrote accounting articles. Just in my genre, and then moving outside of that into things that were more personal to me. So I've always been able to incorporate the things that I love into my work. That's
great. And I think one common theme between the answer you gave and the answer that Frank gave is that you don't necessarily have to have a degree. You have to have the knowledge to prove yourself, and then you'll be recognized because the company or entity, whatever it is, sees value in you having proven that you have the knowledge. So that's really important. Thank you for that. Janet, did you want to add something?
I did. I think from piggybacking on what you just said on the degree, for me, that was really important. Working hard we can't stress that enough. And I think all of us would encourage that nowadays, putting your time in, putting your dues in. When I first started out, I knew I was going to be a doctor. I was in medicine. So when I went to college, I knew 10 years before that, that's what I was going to do. I was putting my resume together in high school, doing extracurricular activities in order to look good for the Board of Medical Examiners. I knew what I was going to do. I do nothing right now that I thought I was going to do back then. And for me, that was really important. So when I took when I went to college, I was studying for my MCATs, and I decided I was going to take a job. And I ended up taking a job at an international trade association. And I remember the day, and that was just to make money. I wasn't planning on staying there. And then I got on a plane to Washington, D.C. for a meeting. And I sat in row 21C, and I'll never forget this. In the back of the seat was The Economist magazine. I didn't read The Economist, who in their early 20s read The Economist. But there was an article about the World Trade Association. And I was working for an international trade association, and I was hooked. And I realized pretty soon after that, I loved international business. I was good at it. I recognized I was good at it. And it started a whole new course for me. So I say that's really important for people to understand. You might have a path in your brain on where you want to be, but let what you do, like Frank says, let that take you. That's where you get happiness in your job, and where you can really make a difference. If I didn't follow that, who knows, where I'd be right now. But I'm definitely happy with the decision that I let my career take me. And really quick on your comment regarding not always needing a degree. I always felt in the course of my job when I was working, whether it was in Washington, D.C. with some pretty powerful people, I never felt like I was meant to be there. When they would introduce people, they were introducing people with, doctorates and from George Washington University. And I felt this small sometimes being on a panel. But after 10 or 15 years of being an industry expert, I had no problem sitting at the table with White House officials and being one of the industry experts. And that takes time and confidence, but it also takes a lot of belief in yourself that you did choose the right path and you're meant to be there. So degrees are great, and they do help us find purpose or get at that table. Mm-hmm. But I think it's the confidence in your expertise and making sure that you're always getting that expertise that can help you get to that table. So that was my experience, and it's done me well so far.
That is really great insight. Yeah. This next question I'm going to open up to the entire panel. It's one that I almost excluded, but then I thought, no, there's something here. And the question was, isn't business really just common sense? And so I thought that was so interesting once I thought about it. So I'll turn it a little bit and add to it. What do you think are the key keep knowledge pieces of success that have enabled you in your careers? It's another way of asking the same question, but the question as submitted is, isn't business really just common sense? Anybody's welcome to start with that one.
Can I start off real quick, Scott?
Sure.
Because I do taxes and I see many self-employed people's income statements and tax returns and how much money they're making. Business is not just self. What did they say, Scott?
Common sense.
Common sense. Because it takes a lot of tenacity to do things that you don't want to do. And you don't want to sit down and do your tax return. And you don't want to sit down and figure out how to get the permit that you need or who you need to talk to at this department to get that done. So you need to surround yourself with people that enjoy doing things that you don't want to do. And it's more than common sense. It's a lot of tenacity and a lot of risk taking.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to add.
Oh, sorry. Wow, Casey.
All
We're
right,
on
you
the
go
same
first.
line. Is being proactive is so important. Forecasting, having a plan, but also remembering that that plan is a moving target. You can't ever expect your plan to never change. Like every day, especially in, with the craziness that's going on right now, at every end of day, I go through my notes and they're like 5 pages. It's just been so much customer service lately, and make my plan for the next day so that when I go in the morning the next day, I already know the things that I have to do. However, I also have in the back of my mind that next phone call, when it rings, and it's usually ringing as soon as I walk in the door, that's probably going to shift my whole day because there's going to be some fire that I need to put out. But as a business owner, you need to be proactive in knowing that those fires are going to be there, and then being organized. So there's just a lot of elements to it. Common sense is amazing. Yes, you need common sense to be successful, but it's way more than that.
Yeah. And Casey?
I'm going to hang on that word because we're talking about marketing too. Your common sense is not your customer's common sense. And I think that's a really tough lesson to learn. With Foodie and Training as a startup, we got stuck there. We thought that the recipe box, we could make it so cool that everyone would want one on their counter because that's what we want. That's our common sense. That's what we see. What we found though, and a lot of what was just said about just going out there and doing it and figuring out what works really fell into play for us because we spent a year doing First Fridays in downtown Camas, and it was a slog for us sometimes because we really just had to show up and be there. And we learned by talking to people and watching their reactions that they weren't interested in that box at all. They were interested in the recipes and they were interested in being part of a club. I'm not really community minded. I'm more of an introvert. So that is not my common sense at all. I had to wait and listen and put something out there for them to react to. I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs get really stuck. A great mentor, I saw one of the questions about, did you have a mentor? He was huge for me. Mentors made me everything I am today. But one of them said, he called it belly button gazing. And I think that's a really great term because that's what you want to avoid. That's when you take your common sense. My definition is that's when you take your common sense and you put it as a filter over everyone you meet.
In other words, be open to other input and insight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Really good. Anybody else want to comment on that one?
Yeah, I'll chime in. I would say, common sense is, the funny thing would be, and I know we don't have the time for it, but if we all went through and defined what we meant by, what we think they mean by that, we'd probably get very different answers. That's the tricky part about that. But I would say that you could go in as everyone who's answered this question has spoken to different elements. Business can be, just like human interaction can be simple at times, but very complicated at times. And business is definitely not an exception to that rule, in that I would say really kind of keying off of two things that Casey brought up was that relationships, I would say, are key. Whereas you might have a clear plan. Whoever had said, Scott, I think you did earlier, my dogs just decided that my privacy was not important either. They just nudged their nose their way in here. But really, I would say one of the pivotal things in business, whether you work for a corporation or a smaller private company, or you start your own company and you're trying to attract business and establish business, relationships are going to be key. Probably one of the most foundational things.
Yeah.
Casey had also spoken to mentorship, and I would say that is one of the also in my experience in my career, one of the key aspects of success is finding someone that is not only going to be able to give you that's further down the road, that can give you insight and wisdom and help you direction, kind of raise the bar. I mentioned that I have my master's. It wasn't even on my radar. I was like a C, a 2.0 or 2.2 student in high school. Didn't take school seriously. It wasn't a priority to me. And, once I started going to college and paying for education, then all of a sudden I thought, oh, this is important, right? I'm paying for this. And, and turn that around. But as I was finishing up my bachelor's degree, my mentor was like, have you thought about this? And raised the bar for me in a way that I wasn't even on, something I was looking at, because Verizon at the time paid 100% for your books and tuition. Wow. And he said, in 2 years, you could knock this out. Your daughter will be 3 years old, won't even realize, how much time you've been absorbing into, studying. And then it's done, and Verizon will have paid for all of it. And so it really helped me. But beyond the direct advice and raising the bar is having an advocate, people that are advocates for you, building those relationships. If you're trying to start a business, something may seem so basic, but yet you'd be scratching your head, just like Casey spoke to, that it's like, why don't they want this? This is so amazing. But you've got to, develop relationships and listen and pay attention. What is it that my boss or the customer wants? It's so important. Yeah. And the last thing I'd say as far as relationships would be two things. One, on mentor, it doesn't have to necessarily be your boss. If you're working for someone and they're an amazing boss, or you like your job, but it's clear that they're not an advocate for you, or they're not equipped, maybe they don't have the skill set. I've worked for a few high-level, executive-level leaders that are very sales-focused, but I was the senior operations leader. They weren't the person that could really give me guidance operationally. And so, seeking out and finding, it can be outside of your company or a different department or whatnot, but somebody that will advocate for you and give you wisdom and insight is very important.
Yeah. And I want to follow that up, Frank, with just the observation from my working time is that everybody has been starting at some point in their life. And my experience is that when students approach people that they view as potential mentors, it's very, very rare that will not be well received. Is that the consensus of the panel?
Yeah, if I can just add one thing that I want every student out there that's trying to figure out what they want to do with their life, call someone in your life or ask someone. It seems like a difficult thing, but my point is, have an informational interview. Ask them if you can come to their office and ask them, these kind of questions that we're addressing today. What do you like about your job? How did you get started? That's probably the best compliment you can give any professional, is that you want to learn about what they do. And they're going to want to help you. It's free.
Yeah, excellent point.
Yeah, you're not asking for a job. You just want to learn.
And Frank, I just want to go back to your point also. You're not advocating that people don't pay attention in high school.
No, not at all. Not at all. I definitely felt silly that when I was, like a lot of things in life, when it was free to me, I took it for granted.
Sure.
And then once I was having to pay to take classes that I had already taken or, could have taken in high school,
Right.
I felt silly about it, like I had squandered the value of that. So yeah, I totally agree. The silver lining that I would say to that is that don't allow yourself to be boxed in. One of the coolest things that I've experienced in life is the opportunity to kind of reinvent yourself. And so where I've never been this before, and then all of a sudden you just ask exactly, just like Kelly had said, talk to somebody who's doing something that you're interested in, and usually they're excited about it. That's why they're doing it, and they're happy to talk to you about it.
Right.
But I took a college study skills class. That was one of the first classes I took at a community college, and I was like, oh, that's how people get A's. They just follow this simple process, and it made it really easy. We're so often to be like, oh, they're smart and I'm stupid, or they're this and I'm that. And it doesn't have to be that way. I'd never run before, finally got fed up spending all this money at a health club and bought a pair of running shoes back in like 2007 and started just walk running. It was miserable. I hated it. And before I knew it, I was jogging a couple of miles and then 5 miles, and somebody gave me a plan, and I ran four marathons. I was like, and all of a sudden I was a runner. I had never been a runner. And so it's just, there's so many things you can do if you don't box yourself in and you're willing to ask somebody else for help.
I think that's excellent. And the thought it brings to my mind is nobody knows anything from the beginning, right? It's what you set your mind to learn. And that's how you get to where you need to be. I wish we had another hour. I think you guys are all awesome. But we are coming to the end of our time. And for those questions that were submitted that I didn't get to, I'll apologize to the students. But I'd like to end with an important one, which is for each of you. If you just step back and fast rewound yourself back to high school or middle school, what's the one point of advice you would give to students right now?
Don't be afraid to try, and don't be afraid to ask.
Great. How about you, Frank?
Yeah.
I've hit on the big ones about mentors, seeking out mentors. That's a big one. I would say, lean into your fears. Don't run from failure. Don't make a decision on, am I sure that I can be successful in this? Because growing through failure is one of the biggest things. And so I'm bunching a few things in here, but the last thing I'd say with that is don't run away from development opportunities either. Keep learning, right? It doesn't have to be a college program, but just if you're passionate about something, learn about it and keep learning, keep growing. And in my case, professionally, one of the differentiators that I think was key for my success was taking, they were called development opportunities, right? Which just meant taking on additional responsibility without any additional compensation. But it was those things that then when you apply for the job down the road, you can say, I've done all these things that weren't a part of my normal job.
Yeah, my father-in-law used to say that the best job was the one you were underpaid for. And I always resonated. I thought that was a great saying. Tracy, I think I cut you off. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, do everything like it matters the most, because then people see the pride in your work, and you'll end up with a good project. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be done in the time frame that you have.
Yeah, perfect. Well said. Everything has your signature on it is how I think of it. All your work has your signature on it. Janet?
I think going along with what has your signature, for me, I put a lot of value in knowing who I am as a person, and my personal brand. And I think everybody, when you're in junior high, high school, if you start working on that, and what I mean by that is, if you were to ask your teacher, if you were to ask your best friend, if you were to ask your mother, somebody that doesn't know you, they should all say the same thing about you. Leave no question to it. So if somebody were to ask about me, I work really hard that people know that I'm honest, I'm straightforward. I will always be there to help. and I'll always look for A to B in the straight line. And I don't mince words. That's me. That's not everybody else. But I know that you can ask anybody in my life, work or personal. And I think that will go a long way if you start working on that now. And I've seen high school students really start working on it, and the power that it's given them to shrug things off, or 100% no, they wouldn't believe that about me. It doesn't even matter what it is. It could be a rumor on the playground. It can be a rumor in high school, but if your friends can defend you and say, that doesn't sound like Janet, she would never do that. That's what we want in the business world, and that's what we want in our personal lives. So for me, that's knowing your personal brand, and if they can work on that, that can be pretty incredible.
Yeah, and for those of you who I've worked with, I do feel like I know your personal brand. And it's high. Casey, I'll give you the last word here, and then we'll turn it back over to Chad.
Oh, wow. Just wrapping up Janet's comment, saying it's one of my favorite quotes, so I wanted to share it. The only true sense of stability in this world is knowing who you are at the core and being willing to change everything else about yourself except that core. It's on my office wall, and I think it's really important. Although who you are now is not who you're going to be in 10 years. So, take that with a grain of salt and be able to change it too.
Yeah, I like that saying a lot. Very well said. Well, I want to just say thank you so much to all of you for being here for an hour. Like I said, I feel like I could talk to you for a few hours more. Whether you'd want to or not is another question. But I will just say again, thank you. And for the students who are watching, keep watching. Next week, we'll be doing our animal health panel. So we're excited about that. And Chad, any closing words for us?
Yeah, thank you, Scott. And thank you to our panelists for such a great conversation and discussion. Next week's panel features professionals from the animal health world, like we talked about, like Scott mentioned. If you have questions for those panelists, please ask your teacher for the link to submit your question. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and check back next week for our next virtual career panel. So from all of us at Career Connect Southwest at ESD 112, thank you very much for your participation in the career panel.